Yeah.
Anyway, so but the debate is, we wanted to bring up in this podcast. Is it time that the UFC changed their gloves?
The funny thing about that is
Because
Trevor Whitman has
That's
his
what I was
own
gonna
set
bring up.
of gloves through Onyx, right?
Yep.
However, he's talked to the UFC and they're incredibly interested, right? And the only issue is they do not want to purchase the gloves through Onyx unless they own them,
Yeah.
right? So it's a very strange situation. Now, the point on these gloves is, if I'm not mistaken, is that there's actually a curvature to it, so that instead of having fingers up, they curl over.
Okay. So just let me read out the quote for you.
Mm.
This allows your hands to stay in a natural fist-locked position, curved right away. If you see the strapping system in there, so that you don't get that boxing break in your hands. It keeps everything, all the muscles, ligaments, and bones in place. So in that way, when you're punching, everything is in form. That was a quote from Rashad Evans, who heavily endorses the gloves, because I believe he was the one who first introduced them to Joe, and then Joe had Trevor on the podcast with Justin Gaethje. Yeah. So I believe so here's another quote. We are using leather in the hand compartments, but when it's your wrist and palm, when everything is sweating, we're using different material. You don't need those hand wraps. You do not get those sliding knuckles. Because often we actually see a lot of fighters having to quickly adjust their gloves.
Yes, because the wraps can. They do have really good hand wrappers and things like that beforehand. But when you get incredibly sweaty, especially when you're grappling and stuff like that, it can make the padding on the knuckles actually slide a little bit. Yeah. It's interesting that he's actually approached the UFC, and the UFC are incredibly interested. However, Dana and the UFC are only particularly interested if they own the product.
Yeah.
They want to purchase the product. To be honest, Trevor Whitman has made something and he's put a lot of time into it, and he owns the intellectual property for that.
Yeah. So
if he does not, what they could do, right? Trevor could either stand his ground, and the UFC finds an alternative, or continues out of ignorance is bliss, and they don't really care.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have to. They still got people to watch, and they didn't have to pay someone a win bonus because neither of them won. Mm-hmm. But the other option is that Trevor Whitman could kind of change his mind, although it is his intellectual property and he's probably got patents and things like that, and he's paid for all this stuff. He can sell it to the UFC, but have royalties for, each, certain amount that is purchased by the UFC, right?
And you can strike some form of deal, like they allow them to buy the property off him, but it's still under his name or something like that.
He would always be known as the creator. However, if he's signing over his intellectual property and his idea for how the gloves are produced and how that they've got you in that curled position without actually using your muscles to squeeze, and it protects you from doing eye pokes, is incredibly beneficial for the UFC. So they can afford to pay someone like Trevor royalties each time, especially when they're so tight-knit together anyway, since Trevor already does the audio recordings during fights and has his own tips during fights taking place on UFC cards anyway. I would see it incredibly beneficial in buying Trevor Whitman's product, which is what they're interested in anyway, but making it mutually beneficial for Trevor Whitman through a more lucrative deal and through royalties and things like that. And still maybe possibly homage to Trevor Whitman's, because that's incredibly good. Imagine if they could purchase these gloves and then say, the UFC is different because we also look out after our fighters, not just by medical costs, not by how much we pay them, not by the prestige that they have, but it's also by the equipment we give them.
It gives them a better name.
It gives them an incredibly better name. Before they start, they can already do adverts and you can purchase these UFC gloves produced by head coach Trevor Whitman at Elevation Elevation MMA, and you can purchase these for $59.95. They could do that, right? And everyone would change from those normal 4-ounce gloves and go for those ones.
Yeah.
So I could, if they're moving over to Venom now, I'm sure they could.
It's gonna be
also they could also have work out a deal for Trevor to slide in there too.
Yeah. Does Trevor own Onyx Sports?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.